Hello. Today I'm going to talk to you about a very important concept in constitutional law, which is due process. And our entire country is modeled on a due process model, which means we prefer that individuals be treated fairly rather than just trying to convict people for crimes. So I'm going to start with a discussion of the difference between the federal due process clause and the state due process clause. The federal due process clause applies to the federal government, and it's in the Bill of Rights in the Fifth Amendment. The state due process clause came later, after the Civil War, and it applies to the states, and it's in the 14th Amendment. Other than that, the clauses are written exactly the same, and they have the same verbiage, and the point of that verbiage is that states need to provide due process to their citizens to the same degree that the federal government needs to provide due process to the citizens of the United States of America. And due process can be divided into two kinds. There is what we call procedural due process, and procedural due process guarantees the right to a fair trial. And a fair trial has been defined as providing an individual, the individual that's being tried, the defendant, with notice of an action against him or her, and an opportunity to be heard or defend against those criminal charges. So if a government action impedes upon an individual's right to know that charges are being brought against them and to defend against those charges, it violates procedural due process. Another aspect of due process, a very important aspect, is what we call substantive due process. And substantive due process prevents the government from impinging upon fundamental rights by enacting unreasonable laws. And laws can be unreasonable for a variety of reasons. Laws can be unreasonable and violate substantive due process if they are void for vagueness. And void for vagueness means the laws are ambiguously written, which means they are subject to more than one interpretation. And if a law is written ambiguously, using ambiguous terms, leaving it open to different interpretations, what happens is it gives too much discretion to law enforcement, and we don't want that. We want law enforcement to have a very clear picture of what is an illegal action and what is not. So let me give you an example. Let's say a state enacts a law that prohibits inappropriate attire on state beaches. The term inappropriate attire is vague. It can mean different things to different people, and most importantly, it can mean different things to different law enforcement officers. So Officer A might arrest someone for wearing a two-piece bathing suit on a state beach because he thinks that's inappropriate. And Officer B might arrest someone for wearing a bathing suit at all on a state beach because she thinks all bathing suits are inappropriate. And you see how unfair that is to citizens. It doesn't give them notice of what is illegal, and it gives law enforcement way too much discretion. Another example of a law that could violate substantive due process is a law that is written in an overbroad fashion. And this is different from a vague law. A law that is overbroad is actually not written with vague terms, but it criminalizes too much. It criminalizes conduct that is protected by the Constitution, as well as criminalizing conduct that is not. So let me give you an example of this. Let's say a state enacts a law that prohibits photographing nude minors, anyone under the age of 18, for example. Now, this sounds okay on its face. Of course, you don't want people taking photographs of minors, because minors can't give true adult consent, that are nude for sexual purposes. But what about a picture of a nude baby? Lots of people take pictures of nude babies. That's actually a very popular way to take a picture of a baby. And babies are minors. So you see how this law criminalizes too much. Taking a picture of a nude baby should be every mother and father's right, or anyone's right, really, as long as it's not being used for sexual purposes. So this law would be overbroad, criminalizes protected and unprotected conduct. And of course, the conduct that's protected in the nude baby example, the photograph, would be conduct that's protected under the First Amendment to the Constitution. Another thing that's protected under substantive due process is freedom from arbitrary laws. And arbitrary laws are laws that have no government interest supporting them, or no compelling government interest supporting them. We don't know why they were enacted, actually. And often an arbitrary law, or a law that's being attacked as arbitrary under substantive due process, is a law that has a moral or an ethical quality to it. For example, if you enacted a law that prohibited and criminalized being homeless, being you can't offer an address when a law enforcement officer asks you for one because you don't have one, you don't have a home, this would be punishing someone for their status. A homeless person isn't necessarily a criminal. There's no criminal act inherent in not having an address. So this law doesn't seem to have any compelling government interest. If someone hasn't committed any criminal act, they should not be punished criminally. Anyway, good luck with the rest of the lecture, and please never hesitate to contact me if you have any questions.